Okay, so I've prepared some resources that I think you might find to be interesting in terms of, let's see. I found some options here that I think you'll find to be interesting and maybe useful for you. I need to share my screen with you. Okay, you should all be seeing my screen now. And it should say changes in the real estate industry. So what does that mean to me? Does everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I prepared this for myself to help explain some of the changes and some of the questions that I'm getting from my people. And I'm going to make it available to you if you want to use it as I prepared it, or if you want to modify it for your own use, that's fine too. So at any rate, changes in real estate industry. So what does that mean to me? And, first of all, there's the law, the NAR lawsuit, and that alleges that commissions are set by NAR and MLSs, and that unduly inflates commissions. Now, we all know that that's false, but a lot of our buyers and sellers don't know that that's false. So I think it's important to point out to them that the lawsuit really had no merit. Be that as it may, NAR did get a judgment against them, and NAR is involved in the settlement. So a settlement was agreed to by the National Association of Realtors. And the industry changes that are a result of that settlement are that there's a mandatory buyer agency contract that is required, and there are no advertisement of commissions on the MLS. So those are the two big changes. So what does that all mean? How does that make any difference? Okay, so here's the old way that we used to do real estate, okay? And the old way of doing it is that you had a seller and a buyer. You had a seller broker and a buyer broker, and you had the MLS. And so a listing contract was initiated between the seller and the seller's broker. And in that contract, it outlined what the seller broker commission was going to be. And that could be anywhere from 0 to 3.5%. I haven't really seen commissions over 3.5%, but it could go higher. But that was a negotiated number between the buyer and the seller's broker. Included in that was typically a buyer broker commission. And usually it was split equally between the two. So if the total commission was 5%, then it might be 2.5 to the seller broker and 2.5 to the buyer broker. But it's not always that way. And that's, again, that's a negotiable number. And that was negotiated between the seller broker and the seller. Now, as a result of that listing contract, the seller broker advertised on the MLS the commission being offered to the buyer broker, along with the property that's being sold, is promoted in the MLS. And so the buyer broker over here could find out what the commission is that they're going to earn by showing this house or selling this house, not by showing it, but by selling it, by looking at the MLS. Now, the buyer may or may not have had a buyer agency contract, because in the old days that was optional. So you could have a contract with your buyer, between buyer and buyer broker, but you might not. So you might not have this. This is just an optional thing. But you did have a purchase agreement, and the purchase agreement was between buyer and seller. And so though that was negotiated, prepared by the buyer broker, but it's a document outlining the relationship of the buyer and the seller. So that's how things used to be in the old days before July 1 or August 17 for other parts of the country. So now there's a new way, okay? And here's the new way, okay? First of all, the MLS is X'd out here because buyer broker commissions cannot be advertised on the MLS. So the buyer broker cannot look on the MLS and determine if any buyer broker commission is being paid by the seller, and if so, what amount that might be. So that's not allowed anymore. That's X'd out. That we still have a listing contract between the seller and the seller broker. The seller broker commission is negotiated, and it can be anywhere between 0% on up to whatever the negotiated amount is. Now the buyer broker commission is optional. In other words, you do not have to pay anything to the buyer broker if you elect not to. However, you still can, as a seller, offer a buyer broker commission. So you can still do that. It's an optional thing now, but it cannot be advertised on the MLS. So it's advertised directly between the seller broker and the buyer broker. And so that's what this line here indicates, that this commission is communicated directly between the two of them. Okay. Now, what's new is that there is now a buyer contract that's required. It's no longer optional for every buyer to be represented in a purchase of a house. They must sign a buyer contract prior to looking at the first home or first listing. And that is required. And on that contract is going to be a buyer broker commission that is negotiated. And it's going to be whatever percentage is negotiated, typically somewhere between 0 to 3.5%, but it could be higher than that. It's all depends on what's negotiated in between. There could even be a retainer fee that is negotiated between buyer and broker and included in that buyer contract, buyer agency contract. So that's one of the big changes is right here. So no MLS advertising, buyer contract is required. The other thing that this brings into play is that now the buyer can negotiate with the seller for their buyer agent commission. So whatever they agreed to up here in the buyer contract, they can request now in the purchase agreement that the seller pay that buyer agent commission. And that's covered in an addendum to the purchase contract. And that is a negotiable item. So that can be negotiated between buyer and seller as a negotiated item. So there's two ways for a broker to get paid. One is that the seller broker agrees to pay the buyer broker as part of the listing agreement. And so the buyer broker would execute a broker compensation agreement between the buyer broker and the seller broker to cover that. The other way, which is probably going to be the most common standard of practice, is to negotiate that in the purchase contract, in which case the buyer will indicate what commission they're asking for, and the seller will either agree to that or will counter that with a counter offer. And so that will be a negotiated number based on the purchase contract. So that's essentially the new way of doing business. Now, buyer agent contracts, how do they work? Well, first of all, it confirms our agency relationship that if I'm your buyer's agent, I'm representing you as the buyer. It is for a set period of time, and it may be amended or ended by mutual agreement. And so for instance, if you're talking to your client about this, one of the things I'm going to do is the same thing I do with listings, which is I have a guarantee. And my guarantee is that I will perform as I have indicated, or they can ask for release from their listing contract. And so it's the same thing for my buyers. If they sign a buyer contract and I'm not doing my job, I'm not performing as I've committed to perform, then they could ask for a mutual release from the contract, and I will let them out of the contract. That's my guarantee to them. At any rate, that is a negotiated time period, that set period of time, but there has to be one, beginning and ending. It specifies the negotiable compensation that I earn that you may be liable for paying. We make every effort to ask the seller to pay, but according to the contract, if the seller doesn't pay, then you would be liable as the buyer to pay my compensation. You may choose to pay your buyer agent direct at closing, or you could have a negotiated retainer fee that might be charged by the buyer agent. I don't charge retainer fees, but some agents may charge a retainer fee that's non-refundable, and that's a negotiated amount. And again, you could pay your buyer agent direct at closing in lieu of asking the seller to pay the buyer agent. So that's an option with your buyer agent contract. It outlines the specifics of the home that you're looking for. So it puts down in writing basically your basic criteria for home finding. And it is required by law in Indiana before viewing a home. That is the change, I guess, in the real estate industry. So I sent this to you in a PDF form, and you're welcome to use the PDF form and copy that and give it to your clients if you want. But I also have this in a PowerPoint version. So if you want the PowerPoint version or Keynote version, just let me know, and I'll send it to you. I'll probably post it out there in your shared folder anyhow, just so that you could go and get it. But if you want it before I get it posted there, just let me know and I'll send it to you. So I think that could be useful to you in communicating with your clients. Any questions on that? Okay, I'm not hearing any questions. Something else that you might consider, sometime back, I told you about Greg Luther, and I attended a meeting with Greg Luther Friday. I guess it was Friday. And he has a lot of good ideas. Some of his ideas are a little bit out there, but I think overall he's got some pretty good ideas. And so I just want to talk about a couple of the ideas that he had. I took a lot of notes on this, and so I'll just kind of review some of the things that he had to say. One of the things that he talked about is you need to focus on what you're doing for your business. We can get caught up in what's going on in the marketplace and what other agents are doing, but really what we need to focus on is what we're doing for our businesses. And so what is best for our businesses? One of the things that we need to recognize is that commercial real estate has always been this way. There was never any offer of compensation to the buyer broker in a commercial real estate transaction. That was always negotiated either between the brokers or negotiated by the client. So commercial has always been this way. So for commercial agents, they're wondering what's the problem. This is how we've always done business. So commercial agents are used to this. Also, there's a lot of places, other places in the country where this has been the norm. I think it's either North Carolina or South Carolina that has required buyer agreements for a couple of years now. That's just something to keep track of. One of the questions that you need to ask yourself, though, is my buyer representation worth it? So I'm charging 3% or 2.5% or 2, whatever I'm charging. Am I worth it? And if so, how am I worth it? And you need to answer that question for your buyer, because the buyers are asking themselves, am I worth it? Are you worth it? Now, one of the things that you're offering them, by the way, is risk mitigation. Because by getting a representation from an experienced buyer's agent helps them mitigate the risk of purchasing a home. Because we know what a lot of those risks are, and we can help them mitigate those risks by keeping an eye on what's going on in a purchase transaction. So that's an important thing that we probably should start adding to our vocabulary when we're talking to buyers, is one of the things that we're offering is risk mitigation. Okay. Another way of putting this into an example for them, because a lot of times they say, well, why don't I just have the seller agent then represent me and the seller, which they could do. That's a limited agency transaction. They'll still have to execute a buyer agency agreement with the seller to do that, but the seller's agent could do both, just like they always have. However, if you're being sued by someone, okay, so you get a notice that you're being sued by someone, would you call up their attorney and say, hey, would you represent me as well as the person suing me? Nobody in their right mind is going to do that. We're not going to use their attorney. Why? Because their attorney is biased to them. And so why would we want to use their attorney? No, we want our own attorney. We want our own representation, someone who's watching out for my interests and not the other party's interests. And so that's a good example of why you need a buyer's agent. Now, you could also ask, yourself, what's your value versus a flat fee? Are you worth it? Take a look at your value stack. What are the values? What are the things that you bring to the transaction? And is it worth it? How strong is your value stack? Cost is only a factor in the absence of value. So if you show no value to a buyer, then your cost is too high. However, if you show good value, then you can justify the cost of using a buyer agent. You need to ask yourself, what are you saying that's different from everyone else? Everyone else is going to say, well, I'm going to find houses for you, and I'm going to be your friend, and I'm going to watch out for your best interests. And everybody's doing that. Everybody does that. So what are you going to do different? Are you going to do anything that they're not doing? That's what the question you want to ask yourself. One of the keys to that is maybe you could help them find off-market listings, and we'll talk about that in a minute, about how you could do that. And that's by having a menu of services, good, better, best type menu of services. And so, for instance, we talked about this. I'm putting this up on the screen. You all should be able to see a menu of services here. And what I've done is modified my my menu of services for home sellers. And I've put out a menu of services, what I call home finding packages. I have a silver, gold, and platinum, so a good, better, and best package. And so, first of all, finder compensation is 2.5% for silver, 3% for gold, 3.5% for platinum. Now, what's included? Okay, so buyer consultation meeting is included in all three. So I meet with them for a buyer consultation. I set up a BLC home search. That's included in all three. I email listings that meet the buyer criteria. That's included in all three. I schedule showings at the buyer request. Okay, that's at all three. I prepare up to 3 purchase offers. That's included in all three. I negotiate inspection responses, included in all three. I review title and survey documents, included in all three. Schedule the closing with the seller's agent, included in all three. And I attend closing, included in all three. Now, just about every agent does this, the silver, right? I mean, just about every agent does that. They may, you know, so they're going to typically do this. So what's my gold package? So my gold package, in addition to all of this, is I provide a property report for all the showings, and the property report shows them the estimated market value of the property, and they can compare that to the list price to determine if that's a good price to pay for that home. I identify potential off-market homes by letting people know that I have a buyer out there. And so I send out emails and I let other real estate agents know that I'm looking for a particular kind of property, maybe in a particular neighborhood or area, to try to find off-market homes. I do a perfect home finder campaign, and that is that I will send a letter to homeowners in a particular neighborhood that the buyer may be interested in, and try to solicit off-market listings with that letter. And so that's included in my gold package. Now, in my platinum package, I prospect for off-market homes. So in other words, I go the extra mile and actively look for off-market homes and try to find them. I do the perfect home finder campaign up to 3 letters now. So I'll prospect 3 different neighborhoods for the home buyer. I will do a video walkthrough as needed. So if they can't go see a house, I'll go there and do a video walkthrough for them so that they can see the house on video. And that way we can get to that house quickly, even if they can't schedule it live. I'm going to attend the inspection with them. And I'm going to monitor seller requested repairs that are the result of the inspection. And I'm going to provide a home warranty to the buyer as part of that platinum package. And I might add up here, I might prepare more purchase offers on these other packages. So the gold package, it might be, I might do 6 purchase offers in gold, and platinum package, I might do unlimited offers in the platinum package. Again, I'm just working with this right now. But this way, you know, when I'm talking to them about doing my buyer consultation, and I'm talking to them about how much my compensation is, I say, well, you're gonna select what my compensation is. I have 3 packages. I have 3 home finding packages. I've got a silver, a gold, and a platinum. Let me tell you what they include, and you decide which one fits you the best. And so I think that that's how I'm going to start working with buyers. Now, by no means do you have to do that, but I think that that's a good plan and a good way to to work with buyers and let them know what you're worth. Also, one of the documents that I did prepare for you was part of our buyer consultation, where we outline all the things that we typically do in a real estate transaction. And I made that into a PDF. So when you're meeting with someone for a buyer consultation, you could print that out and leave that with them. And it reminds them of the things that you do to support the sale. So those are some of the resources that I've prepared for you to hopefully help you. Any questions on any of those things? Okay, no questions? Any questions on anything before we end our meeting?
I got a question, Jim.
Yeah.
Not sure if you were able to see that back at you sending sending an email or something like that a couple of days ago, and I'm actually in the back at you account, but they're showing you how to put your commission or the buyer's broker commission on that website. I don't know if you guys seen it.
I haven't. I have not attended that. Um, I would use caution in putting commission on any website, and the reason for that. And again, I know what they're, and I think it's certainly a viable thing. My concern with that is that at some point, the Department of Justice, if they start seeing a workaround of advertising commissions that basically circumvents what they're trying to do, is not have the buyer broker shopping for commissions and not showing houses based on a low commission. And if they start seeing the industry do a workaround on their own websites, I think that the Department of Justice could find that that's not appropriate. So I would be cautious using that. I'm not saying don't use it, and I'm not saying that it's not a good idea, but I would be cautious just because of what I hear out there in the marketplace about the DOJ and about some of the proposed workarounds that again, right now, according to the settlement, you can't advertise seller comp or buyer broker compensation on your website, your personal website. So the back at you is doing it on your personal back at you. So you just need to keep that in mind. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Those of you that are attending the Thursday meeting, I will see you on Thursday. We should have some interesting information for you on Thursday. And so we'll see you then for lunch. I'll send out your menu so that you can choose what you would like to eat. So we'll see you all on Thursday. Have a great day and a productive day. Anything that you might need, always give me a call, email, whatever, and I'll be sure to help you out.
Thank you.
Thank
See you
you.
later.
Thanks, Jim.
Bye.